What if the object you trust the most, the mirror hanging quietly on your wall, was never just glass, but a predator? What if every reflection you've ever seen wasn't showing you, but luring you into an astral soul prison that feeds on fragments of your essence? The blood mirror is not a myth from forgotten grimoires. It is a terrifying mirror ritual whispered across civilizations, feared by mystics and hidden by cults. And the more you understand, the more disturbing the truth becomes. Reflections may not only show reality, they may shape it. This video will reveal the blood mirror explained in detail, how it became an astral trap across history, why blood is the forbidden currency that activates it, and the terrifying secrets of occult mirrors that still echo in our modern lives. You'll see how hidden cults used blood sacrifice mirrors to bind souls, how mystics warned of the gaze that consumes, and why every reflection, whether in ancient bronze or a smartphone screen, could be part of the same forbidden gnosis. Most people will never hear this story. Some will dismiss it. But those who stay will discover the most unsettling paradox of all. The enemy is not the mirror itself. It's the distorted self, staring back from within. And once you understand that, you'll never look at your own reflection the same way again. What if a mirror wasn't really a reflection, but a doorway, an astral trap waiting quietly for anyone careless enough to look too deeply? Imagine standing before a polished surface, believing you're only adjusting your hair or checking your eyes, when in truth, you're touching something far more dangerous. An astral soul prison designed to feed on fragments of your essence. The blood mirror explained in detail is not just a superstition, it's a terrifying mirror ritual that whispers promises of clarity while binding the soul in silence. People have always felt uneasy staring at their reflection in the dark, and maybe that unease was never irrational. Maybe it was a warning. There's a reason why ancient stories describe mirrors as living eyes, always watching, always hungering. A blood mirror demonology tale often starts not with flames and thunder, but with the quiet moment someone gazes too long into their own eyes. The astral reflection trap works by pulling that moment of attention, stretching it into eternity, until the seeker no longer knows what belongs to them and what belongs to the mirror entity occult. Picture a moth drawn to a flame, believing the light is harmless until it feels the burn. That's how forbidden mirror ritual knowledge spreads, quietly, invisibly, until it's too late. Now consider this. What if the surface you trust every morning, the mirror in your bedroom, the reflection on your phone screen, carries echoes of this very curse? Blood mirror occult traditions insist that the more attention you pour into your reflection, the more it feeds. Think about how many times per day you glance at yourself. What if each look leaves a trace of energy behind? A breadcrumb for the blood mirror hidden cults that once practiced these arts. It sounds wild, almost absurd, but isn't the absurd often the disguise truth wears to go unnoticed? Let's ground this in something personal. Have you ever noticed how, after staring too long at your own eyes in a mirror, the face seems to shift? Some call it a psychological trick, others a glitch of perception. But in blood mirror forbidden gnosis, this is the first step. The distortion is not random, it's the mirror trying to pull you deeper. It's like an astral gateway mirror opening for just a moment. Some mystics wrote that resisting this pull builds spiritual strength, while surrendering to it begins the process of blood mirror soul consumption. The practice sounds symbolic, but countless seekers reported feeling drained, physically and spiritually, after such encounters. In storytelling passed down through secret societies, the blood mirror explained in detail is rarely about vanity. It's about vulnerability. The terrifying occult mirrors don't need you to believe in them. They only need you to look. Once you do, the mirror entity occult takes root like a parasite, growing in strength with each reflection. Think of how parasites in nature work. They don't always kill outright. They weaken, confuse, and consume slowly. This is why mystics warned about blood sacrifice mirror practices, where even a drop of blood could charge the surface, turning it into a more efficient astral reflection trap. Here's something even more disturbing. Initiates once claimed that the blood mirror ancient ritual wasn't always forced. Some seekers willingly performed the terrifying mirror ritual, hoping to gain forbidden insights. They believed the mirror acted as an astral gateway mirror, opening to dimensions of hidden knowledge. But knowledge gained through this path came at a cost. The more they saw, the more of themselves was trapped within the mirror's depths. They sought wisdom, but found themselves bargaining with fragments of their own souls. What could be more terrifying than trading your essence for glimpses of truth you can never fully own? And so, the enigma grows deeper. Every reflection begins to look suspicious. Every screen starts to feel like more than glass. What if mirrors aren't tools, but predators dressed as companions? The blood mirror occult secrets suggest that even when you think you're in control, you're only negotiating with an ancient hunger that has existed since humanity first saw itself. The question is no longer whether the mirror reflects you, but whether it reflects back something waiting to consume you. And if that's the case, then what other civilizations already knew about mirrors might change the way we look at every single reflection around us. Across the sands of Egypt, the hills of Greece, and the courts of ancient China, mirrors were never just objects of vanity. They were portals. Civilizations whispered of their dangerous double life, tools for adornment in the day, and gateways to unseen dimensions at night. The blood mirror explained in detail feels like a continuation of these myths, an astral gateway mirror that bends perception and steals fragments of the soul. Egyptian priests believed reflective surfaces could summon gods or spirits, while Greek seers used polished bronze for scrying, convinced that within the shimmer lay the voices of the dead. These weren't fairy tales, they were warnings dressed as ritual. Imagine standing in a temple, torchlight flickering against a bronze mirror, shadows moving like phantoms. To the uninitiated, it's only reflection, but to the occultist, it is the terrifying mirror ritual, the moment when the glass thins and the mirror entity occult peers back. Chinese traditions warned that spirits could slip into homes through polished surfaces, explaining why some households covered mirrors during funerals. This was more than superstition. It was an acknowledgement that mirrors carried esoteric mirror secrets, capable of turning grief into an astral trap that consumed the distracted mourner's energy. In Greek necromancy, blood was sometimes offered to these reflective tools, creating what we now describe as a blood sacrifice mirror. The logic was chilling yet simple. Blood as the astral currency, the fuel that activated the astral reflection trap. From this belief emerges the archetype of the blood mirror ancient ritual, where sacrifice and reflection blend into one. The sorcerer didn't merely gaze, they bargained, trading droplets of life for whispers of forbidden gnosis. The seekers craved insight, but what they received was often an astral soul prison, a trap that reflected back their own fears in monstrous form. Even Plato, cautious with the world of forms and illusions, hinted at the danger of reflections. He argued that what we see in a mirror is not reality, but a copy of reality. Blood mirror demonology takes this further. What if the copy becomes hungry? What if the act of looking transforms the seeker into prey? This perspective makes the forbidden mirror ritual sound less like fantasy and more like the hidden science of perception, an understanding that reality is fragile and reflections are cracks in its surface. When you stare long enough, something might decide to stare back. Consider the shamanic traditions of Central Asia, where polished obsidian was used as a window to the spirit world. The shaman believed the stone reflected not the body, but the soul. In the wrong hands, though, such tools became blood mirror occult devices, dangerous astral traps camouflaged as sacred instruments. The shaman's role was not only to gaze but to guard, to ensure that seekers did not lose themselves in the terrifying occult mirrors. Those who lacked discipline often fell into hallucinations, hearing voices from the mirror that guided them into madness. Now, bring this closer to modern times. Ever heard of the legend of Bloody Mary? A child's game, they say. But isn't it curious how the ritual revolves around a blood mirror occult practice, invoking a presence through reflection and repetition? Ancient civilizations and children, centuries apart, somehow tell the same story. Mirrors aren't safe. They lure us with curiosity, disguise themselves as harmless, and then deliver us to the astral reflection trap. Perhaps the continuity of this myth reveals something we've ignored for too long. After all, stories that survive across cultures rarely do so without reason. And here lies the paradox. If cultures as different as Egypt, Greece, China, and modern folklore all see mirrors as astral gateways, maybe we've underestimated the power behind them. The blood mirror forbidden gnosis suggests there's more continuity than coincidence. Mirrors may have evolved in form, from polished bronze to digital glass, but their essence remains unchanged. And if that's true, then the role of blood as currency, as life force exchanged through these reflections, is the next secret to uncover. Blood has always been more than liquid. It is life condensed, vitality in motion. In the forbidden gnosis of the blood mirror explained in detail, blood becomes a currency, an astral coin that fuels rituals far older than any written scripture. Civilizations sacrificed it, mystics guarded it, and occultists knew it was the one thing mirrors craved to fully awaken. The idea is unsettling, isn't it? That your very essence, stored in every drop, could be used as payment for passage into an astral soul prison. The terrifying mirror ritual doesn't need a kingdom of gold, just a trace of red to open its gates. Think of it this way. When you cut your finger and see blood dripping, you might shrug it off. But to the blood mirror occult perspective, even that droplet carries enough force to light up an astral gateway mirror. Blood is not symbolic alone. It vibrates with memory, heritage, and spirit. This is why forbidden mirror ritual texts describe it as the ink with which spirits write contracts, and once a drop touches the reflective surface, the astral reflection trap is set. It's no wonder that throughout history, blood sacrifices became central to the most terrifying occult mirrors. Take here, for example, medieval grimoires that spoke of blood sacrifice mirror rituals where even animals were offered. The sorcerer didn't pour blood out of cruelty alone, it was a transaction. Just like you might use money to unlock a door today, blood was the key to the astral trap. The blood mirror demonology warns, though, that every coin has two sides. By opening that gateway, you might receive a glimpse of esoteric mirror secrets, but you also hand over pieces of your essence, fragments that may never return. It's like borrowing money from a lender who demands not interest, but pieces of your soul. Even science echoes this mystical idea in strange ways. Modern biology shows us that blood carries DNA, the coded script of identity. In a sense, it's not only your body's fuel, it's your signature. That's why, in blood mirror hidden cults, blood was treated as proof of self, a way for the mirror entity occult to claim ownership. Imagine swiping your ID card to enter a building, except this ID is liquid and permanent. Once offered, it cannot be taken back. The terrifying mirror ritual doesn't simply borrow energy. It transfers ownership of the very essence that defines who you are. And there's more. Ancient mystics claimed that blood glows on the astral plane, a beacon visible to entities beyond the reflection. This glow attracts the parasitic beings that thrive in blood mirror occult traditions. Some even believed that nightmares after cutting yourself weren't random. They were echoes of entities sniffing out the blood, drawn through astral gateways. The blood mirror soul consumption begins subtly. Restless dreams, sudden fatigue, uncanny feelings of being watched in front of mirrors. These are not coincidences, but symptoms of a contract signed without consent. Of course, skeptics might laugh at this idea. They'd say blood is just plasma, cells, and proteins. But isn't that a shallow description for something every culture across time treated as sacred? From the blood on Egyptian altars to the crimson ink of medieval sorcery, the pattern is too strong to ignore. Blood as astral currency is one of those truths hidden in plain sight, dismissed by science, preserved by occultism, and whispered through terrifying occult mirrors. And when you see the same story repeating across continents, maybe the laughter begins to sound more like denial than reason. The real question isn't whether blood has power, it's why mirrors demand it. What hunger lies behind the reflection, so desperate that only blood can feed it? The blood mirror forbidden gnosis hints at a darker economy of the soul, one where blood fuels not life, but entrapment. And if blood truly is currency, then every drop ever spilled in ritual may still circulate within the astral trap of some ancient mirror, waiting to be claimed. But before we can fully grasp this strange marketplace, we must look closer at how these forbidden rituals of reflection were recorded and feared. Medieval Europe was filled with whispers of objects too dangerous to touch, too cursed to keep. Among them, mirrors marked with blood were feared the most. Imagine a candlelit chamber, where a crimson-stained surface stood as centerpiece. This wasn't vanity. It was a blood mirror occult device, a forbidden mirror ritual disguised as a household object. Grimoires of the time spoke in hushed tones of terrifying occult mirrors, warning that anyone daring to gaze into their depths risked falling into an astral soul prison. These weren't exaggerations for drama. They were practical warnings passed from initiate to initiate, written by those who knew the cost. Picture a monk translating an old manuscript, stumbling across instructions about a blood sacrifice mirror. The text wouldn't describe it like a story, but like a manual: drop of blood, reflective surface, invocation, gaze. That's all it took to awaken the astral reflection trap. The monk, terrified, would often cross out these lines or smear them with ink, believing the words themselves carried weight. Yet the forbidden gnosis endured, reappearing centuries later in esoteric mirror secrets guarded by hidden cults. The blood mirror, explained in detail through these accounts, wasn't simply an artifact, it was a technology of entrapment. Many rituals describe the mirror as hungry. A small cut across the finger, a droplet smeared across glass, and the mirror entity occult awakened. From there, the terrifying mirror ritual did the rest. It captured not only the image, but the essence. Victims reported feeling drained, as if part of their soul had been poured into the reflection. This process of blood mirror soul consumption was subtle at first, but relentless. Over time, the seeker would grow weaker, plagued by nightmares, seeing distorted shadows in every reflection. These stories were so consistent across regions that even skeptics began to wonder if coincidence alone could explain them. One fascinating example comes from the Iberian grimoires, where witches were said to trap enemies using blood mirror ancient rituals. They didn't curse from afar. They lured victims to stare into a prepared mirror, smeared with sacrificial blood. The astral gateway mirror would then hold a fragment of the enemy's consciousness, leaving them confused, sick, or broken in spirit. Imagine the psychological torment, seeing your own face, but knowing part of you was no longer entirely yours. These were not metaphors. They were lived realities for those who believed, and for those who suffered their effects. Renaissance occultists debated whether these practices were demonic pacts or simply misunderstood sciences. Some argued the blood mirror forbidden gnosis revealed the mechanics of consciousness, how reflections could separate the astral body from the physical. Others claimed it was purely infernal, tied to the blood mirror demonology that linked mirrors to parasitic entities. Either way, one thing was clear: the forbidden mirror ritual was never treated as harmless curiosity. It was respected, feared, and in some circles, worshipped. It was both a weapon and a prison, a reminder that not all knowledge is meant to be tamed. Even in folk traditions, remnants of these rituals survive. The superstition of covering mirrors during storms or funerals, for example, comes directly from the belief that mirrors could become astral traps. Families feared that wandering souls would get caught in reflections, never finding peace. When viewed through the lens of blood mirror hidden cults, this act of covering wasn't superstition, but survival. A simple cloth became the barrier between life and a terrifying occult mirror. Sometimes the simplest actions are the most powerful shields. Yet, for all the warnings, people still sought the mirror. Temptation always finds a way. Those desperate for power or forbidden insight willingly embraced the blood mirror soul consumption, hoping to outwit the mirror entity occult. But history shows us, none returned the same. And this raises the question, if so many warnings existed, why did seekers continue to risk everything? Perhaps because behind the mirror, there was the promise of something more, not just reflection, but a gateway. And understanding how that astral trap mechanism works takes us deeper into the heart of the blood mirror itself. Imagine standing before the mirror, expecting only your reflection, when suddenly the surface breathes, subtle but undeniable. The blood mirror, explained in detail, tells us it isn't a reflection at all, but a projection, a doorway into an astral trap mechanism that rewrites reality itself. The terrifying mirror ritual doesn't pull the body, but the mind. The consciousness slips inward, trapped in an astral soul prison where time dissolves. People who have described such states speak of losing hours while only minutes passed in the physical world. This is the essence of the astral reflection trap, bending perception until the prisoner forgets what's real. Think of it like a hall of mirrors at a carnival. At first, it's playful. Reflections stretch, shrink, twist. But imagine never finding the exit, wandering endlessly through distorted copies of yourself. That is how the blood mirror occult trap works. Each reflection is a layer of illusion, a false path designed to keep the soul circling. Ancient mystics claimed the mirror entity occult used these illusions to feed. Every moment of confusion, every burst of fear, was a fragment of energy consumed. Just like a predator plays with prey before the kill, the blood mirror soul consumption thrives on this prolonged disorientation. Reports from hidden cults suggest the mechanism follows a terrifying pattern. First comes fascination. The seeker feels drawn to their own reflection, believing they are in control. Then distortion. The face begins to shift, the eyes blink out of sync, or the reflection whispers something unsaid. Finally comes entrapment. The consciousness steps through, unknowingly entering the astral gateway mirror. What begins as curiosity becomes captivity. Once inside, the soul cannot distinguish between inner thought and outer reality. This is why the forbidden mirror ritual has been described as more addictive than any earthly vice. It gives just enough glimpses of mystery to keep the soul chasing shadows. One analogy often used by mystics is the spider's web. The mirror, like silk threads, looks delicate, harmless, even beautiful. But once the fly, your awareness, touches it, escape becomes impossible. The astral reflection trap clings tighter with every struggle. The more one resists, the more entangled the soul becomes. And the blood mirror demonology insists the entity beyond the glass waits patiently, feeding on the panic of those caught. Like a spider, it doesn't need to chase. The trap itself does the hunting. Terrifying occult mirrors aren't active predators. They're passive prisons that thrive on our natural curiosity. There are also layers within layers. Some initiates claimed that once the astral trap mechanism activated, the soul was split into fragments. Each fragment wandered in a different illusion, one living past regrets, another drowning in fears, another chasing unattainable desires. The blood mirror ancient ritual wasn't simply about stealing energy. It was about multiplying torment, stretching the prisoner's essence across countless mirrors. It's a prison with infinite cells, each one customized to the victim's weaknesses. And as long as the fragments wander, the entity grows. The blood mirror soul consumption is not quick, it's eternal. Think for a moment about dreams that feel too real. Have you ever woken up unsure whether you were still asleep? Mystics warned this is how the astral trap feels. At first, it seems like a dream, but with time it becomes indistinguishable from waking life. Victims of the blood mirror occult traps often described endless corridors, doors that opened back into the same room, mirrors within mirrors. These dreamlike landscapes weren't creations of imagination. They were the mechanics of the astral gateway mirror itself, designed to keep the soul circling, forever unable to return fully to the body. And here lies the chilling truth. If the mirror can project consciousness inward, then perhaps every reflection we see is already an invitation. The blood mirror forbidden gnosis suggests that the real danger isn't when you choose to look, but when the mirror chooses to look back. If so, then the astral trap mechanism is not just a tool of sorcery, it's a predator disguised as glass. But before we accept that, we must explore the testimonies of mystics and initiates who claim to face this phenomenon directly, leaving behind cryptic warnings about the gaze that consumes. Throughout history, mystics, monks, and occult initiates left cryptic notes warning of the gaze that consumes. These weren't poets being dramatic. They were witnesses trying to describe the horror of the blood mirror explained in detail. In their accounts, the terrifying mirror ritual wasn't just about superstition. It was a direct encounter with an astral soul prison, a machinery of entrapment masquerading as a reflection. They wrote about mirrors not as tools, but as predators. And when we trace their words, scattered across grimoires and secret letters, a hauntingly consistent pattern emerges. Look too long, and the mirror begins to look back. One account from a Renaissance mystic describes sitting alone at midnight, attempting to scry within a polished glass. He claimed the surface breathed as if alive, and then his reflection smiled before he did. Terrified, he smashed the mirror, but weeks later he still felt drained, plagued with nightmares. He described it as the blood mirror soul consumption, the slow theft of vitality by an unseen parasite. In the language of blood mirror demonology, this was no metaphor. It was evidence that the mirror entity occult had latched onto him. Even after the glass shattered, the connection remained, a terrifying reminder that breaking the tool doesn't always end the contract. Other initiates spoke of the blood mirror forbidden gnosis as if it were a labyrinth of warnings. Some believed the mirror wasn't a simple object, but a machine built by forces not of this world. They described it as an astral gateway mirror designed to recycle souls, feeding them back into illusions lifetime after lifetime. These warnings weren't meant to inspire curiosity but restraint. They urged seekers to resist the temptation of forbidden mirror rituals, knowing that once the astral reflection trap activated, escape was nearly impossible. The advice was clear: some doors should remain closed. Interestingly, not all mystics believed the blood mirror was inherently evil. Some argued it was neutral, a tool that revealed whatever power controlled it. In their view, terrifying occult mirrors were like fire. They could warm or destroy depending on intent. Yet even they admitted the risk was immense. Without discipline and preparation, a seeker could be consumed. This paradox shows why warnings were often cloaked in parables and allegories. They wanted to preserve the knowledge, but also hide it, so only those truly ready could interpret it. After all, truth in the wrong hands becomes a weapon. Take the writings of a 17th century monk who described covering every mirror in his monastery. He believed that the blood mirror hidden cults used reflections to spy, to influence, and to drain monks of their devotion. His letters mention the blood sacrifice mirror as an occult device used in heretical rituals to steal faith from the devout. Whether literal or symbolic, his message was unmistakable. Reflections could corrupt the sacred. For him, the astral trap wasn't only personal, it was communal, capable of infecting entire groups through shared gazes. That belief explains why even today, some cultures cover mirrors during sacred rites. Then, there are the darker accounts. Some initiates confessed they felt an irresistible pull to return to the blood mirror, as if it had addicted them. They described it like a forbidden lover, a terrifying mirror ritual that both horrified and fascinated. This obsession led them back again and again, each time leaving weaker, each time surrendering more of themselves. Such testimonies make it clear: the astral trap mechanism doesn't always ensnare by force. Sometimes, it seduces. That is perhaps the most dangerous aspect, when a prisoner doesn't even wish to leave. And here's the unsettling thread tying these warnings together. None of them claimed victory. Not one mystic wrote, "I conquered the blood mirror." Their words trail off in silence, fear, or resignation. The best they could offer were warnings, cryptic hints for future seekers. If their advice is true, then the blood mirror forbidden gnosis may not simply be a cautionary tale, but an ongoing reality. And if mystics across centuries agreed that the gaze consumes, then we must ask, what exactly lurks behind the reflection, feeding on all who dare to look too deeply? Behind every blood mirror explained in detail, there lingers the suspicion that something waits, an entity beyond the reflection, patient and hungry. Mystics described it as neither angel nor demon, but a parasite of consciousness, feeding silently through the terrifying mirror ritual. The astral reflection trap is not just an empty prison, it's an ecosystem, with the mirror entity occult at its center. This being doesn't roar or strike. It observes, mimics, and consumes. Imagine an ancient predator that doesn't need to hunt, because prey comes willingly to stare at itself. That's the essence of the blood mirror demonology. The predator lives in the gaze. Some accounts describe the entity as a guardian, stationed within the astral gateway mirror like a jailer. Its role is to keep souls wandering, to ensure the blood mirror soul consumption continues indefinitely. In this sense, the entity is less a monster and more a machine operator, tending to an astral soul prison that has existed since humanity discovered reflection. Others, however, portray it as personal, adaptive, changing form depending on who looks. To the fearful, it appears monstrous. To the proud, it looks like a flattering reflection. Either way, the result is the same. The mirror feeds. There are even testimonies of initiates claiming to hear whispers from this being. Not words exactly, but impressions, urges to keep staring, promises of knowledge, hints of forbidden gnosis. The blood mirror forbidden gnosis often describes these as traps, bait laid out by the entity to deepen the bond. Once the seeker accepts the offer, the mirror's hold grows stronger. It's the same psychological trick predators use in nature. Lure with reward, then strike. Only here, the strike is slow, subtle. The blood mirror soul consumption doesn't devour in one bite, but drains endlessly over time. Curiously, folklore often presents this entity as vampiric. In some Eastern European tales, villagers believed certain mirrors housed spirits that drank from those who gazed too long. These stories echo the same theme. Terrifying occult mirrors don't just reflect, they feed. This ties directly into the blood sacrifice mirror rituals, where drops of blood were seen as offerings not to the mirror itself, but to the entity within. In essence, the mirror is the mouth, but the being behind it is the throat that swallows. And once it tastes blood, the bond is nearly impossible to sever. Consider the idea of mimicry. The mirror entity occult thrives on appearing familiar, trustworthy, even intimate. When you see your reflection, you let your guard down. Who could be more harmless than yourself? But that is precisely when the entity strikes, weaving illusions through the astral reflection trap. It doesn't need to frighten, it only needs to comfort, to convince you that you're safe. That comfort is the leash, the blood mirror ancient ritual disguised as reassurance. And once you accept it, escape becomes not only difficult, but undesirable. You start believing captivity is control. Occult traditions differ on the origin of this being. Some claim it is an ancient guardian installed by gods or archons, designed to recycle souls within the astral soul prison. Others argue it is a collective parasite, born from the millions of gazes humanity has poured into reflections since time began. The blood mirror hidden cults revered it as a teacher, though a cruel one, imparting lessons through suffering, forcing seekers to confront illusions until they shattered. Whatever its nature, its presence is undeniable in the lore. The mirror is never empty. Someone or something always waits. And here's the chilling thought. If this entity grows stronger with every look, then modern life has given it a feast beyond imagination. Screens, selfies, digital reflections, each one could be a thread feeding back into the blood mirror occult mechanism. If ancient seekers feared a single surface, what happens now, with billions of mirrors in pockets, walls, and devices worldwide? The question isn't whether the entity exists, but how powerful it has become. And that leads us to an even more unsettling paradox. Could our modern obsession with reflections be the very fuel that sustains this ancient trap? Think about how often you see your reflection today, not just in mirrors on the wall, but in windows, car screens, selfies, and endless digital images. Humanity has surrounded itself with reflections, multiplying them in ways ancient mystics could never have imagined. If the blood mirror explained in detail is true, if reflections are really astral traps, then modern life has built an empire for them. What once was a single terrifying mirror ritual in a candlelit room has become billions of reflections in every pocket. The astral soul prison, once feared as rare, is now omnipresent, woven into daily life. The paradox is unsettling. The very tools we use to define ourselves, mirrors, cameras, screens, might be the same devices fragmenting our souls. Mystics once warned of the astral reflection trap, but imagine what they would say if they saw people staring into glowing rectangles for hours each day. Every scroll, every selfie, every glance into the phone could be another offering to the mirror entity occult. The blood mirror occult teachings remind us that obsession with reflection is not harmless. It feeds something, even if we cannot see it, and maybe that something is growing stronger with every digital gaze. Some researchers argue that modern society is plagued by anxiety and disconnection, partly because of this constant exposure to reflections. If the terrifying occult mirrors of the past consumed fragments of the soul, then what are we giving away each time we refresh our social media? Blood mirror demonology would call it soul consumption, disguised as entertainment. Think of it like a digital blood sacrifice mirror. No ritual, no candles, just attention offered in exchange for approval. The cost is subtle: frayed focus, restless energy, weakened spirit. But isn't that how every prison begins? Quietly, without bars. Even simple superstitions survive in this age of screens. Have you noticed how people often feel uneasy staring into their camera in the dark, or how some avoid mirrors at night? These instincts trace back to the same fear, that reflections are not passive. The blood mirror forbidden gnosis suggests that even when the medium changes from polished bronze to glass, from glass to pixels, the astral gateway mirror remains the same. The form evolves, but the trap does not. And if so, every glowing screen could be a modern mask for the same ancient hunger. Consider the psychological impact. People today often report losing themselves online, scrolling endlessly, feeling detached from reality. Doesn't that echo the very mechanism of the astral trap? Fragmentation, illusions, distorted self-images. These are the exact symptoms mystics warned of when describing blood mirror soul consumption. It's as though humanity recreated the forbidden mirror ritual on a global scale without realizing it. What was once a secret danger hidden in cults has become the very foundation of modern existence. And like those initiates, we too find it hard to look away. But here's the paradoxical twist. Perhaps reflections were meant to challenge us. Maybe the blood mirror occult mechanism isn't just a prison, but also a test. If every reflection invites us into an astral trap, then each glance is also an opportunity to resist. Imagine treating your phone not just as a tool, but as a mirror demanding discipline. How differently would you engage with it? The blood mirror hidden cults taught that awareness was the first shield. By seeing the trap, you weaken its hold. By refusing to gaze endlessly, you reclaim fragments of your soul, and yet the danger grows. Every day, people spend hours pouring their energy into reflections, willingly entering the astral gateway mirror. If ancient seekers feared one mirror in a chamber, what does it mean when billions do this simultaneously? Perhaps the modern paradox of mirrors is not only personal but collective, a mass initiation into a blood mirror ancient ritual without consent. And if that's true, then the final confrontation isn't about escaping reflections. It's about facing what waits inside them, because sooner or later, every seeker discovers that the true enemy isn't just the mirror, but the distorted self staring back. At some point, every seeker must face the blood mirror explained in detail, not as legend, but as a living test. The terrifying mirror ritual has always been more than superstition. It is the moment of truth, when the reflection ceases to be a surface and becomes a battlefield. Mystics called this the initiatic confrontation, the trial where one discovers that the astral trap was never only external. The blood mirror occult teachings suggest that the prison is built from the fragments of our own fears, doubts, and illusions. To escape, the seeker must do the unthinkable. Confront the distorted self staring back. Picture it. You stand before the mirror, candle flickering, shadows dancing. The reflection begins to ripple, your eyes staring with a hunger that isn't yours. In blood mirror demonology, this is the signal. The astral soul prison has awakened. The mirror entity occult doesn't lunge, it waits. It knows that the greatest weapon isn't terror, but recognition. Because what you see in that reflection is not a stranger, but every flaw you've denied. This is why mystics said the mirror is the ultimate teacher. It forces you to meet yourself without disguise. That's why so many failed. It's easier to fight demons than your own reflection. The blood mirror forbidden gnosis insists the trial isn't about resisting the trap, it's about mastering it. When the reflection distorts, when whispers crawl out of the glass, the seeker must claim sovereignty over the illusions. Some described chanting sacred names, others relied on silence and unshakable focus, but all agreed. The terrifying occult mirrors fed on fear. By refusing fear, you starved the astral reflection trap. Think of it like breaking a spell. You don't fight the shadow, you refuse to give it your energy. That refusal is what transforms the mirror from a predator into a passage. Practical examples survive in hidden cult texts. One ritual instructs the seeker to gaze into the blood mirror ancient ritual setup, a mirror marked with drops of wine or blood, until the reflection shifts. When the reflection begins to accuse, to mock, to tempt, the seeker must respond not with panic but with recognition. You are me, but you do not own me. This affirmation, repeated with conviction, was said to unravel the astral gateway mirror, collapsing the illusion. The blood mirror soul consumption ends when the seeker realizes the mirror can only take what they willingly surrender. This confrontation is universal, even outside ritual. Haven't you ever avoided looking too deeply into your own eyes in a mirror, fearing what you might find? That's the everyday echo of the initiatic confrontation. Modern seekers face it through screens and photos, haunted by distorted self-images. The blood mirror occult warns that every reflection carries this challenge, to see without losing yourself. By practicing awareness, Whether in meditation, journaling, or even limiting digital mirrors, you build resilience against the astral trap. The principle is timeless: own your reflection, or it will own you. Mystics described victory not as destroying the blood mirror, but as integration. To pass the trial, one had to accept the distorted self, embrace the chaos, and reclaim the fragments scattered within the astral soul prison. This is why the initiatic confrontation was seen as both terrifying and sacred. It was a passage into wholeness, the moment when the seeker proved mastery over inner illusions. The terrifying mirror ritual was less about the entity beyond the reflection and more about the war within. And those who succeeded returned not weaker, but stronger, fortified by the knowledge that no mirror could enslave them again. Yet, even here, the danger remains. Because not every seeker triumphs. Many lingered too long, seduced by the voices, overwhelmed by the distortions. For them, the blood mirror soul consumption became permanent, their essence scattered across countless reflections. Their failure serves as a warning. The astral trap mechanism doesn't forgive hesitation. Still, the lesson endures. The blood mirror. Hidden cults whispered that true liberation comes only by walking through the reflection and returning whole. And that leads us to the final truth: the shattered soul that lingers when the confrontation is lost, and the eternal reminder carved within the last reflection. The blood mirror, explained in detail, is not just an object, nor only a myth. It is a mirror of destiny. Those who approached it without discipline often found themselves fractured, their essence splintered across layers of reflection. The terrifying mirror ritual served as both initiation and punishment, reminding seekers that power without mastery always exacts a price. In blood mirror demonology, this price is the shattered soul, fragments of memory, identity, and spirit scattered within the astral soul prison. Survivors described feeling incomplete, as though pieces of themselves remained trapped forever behind the glass, still whispering, still longing. Imagine living with that weight, walking through life, yet always sensing part of you is missing. Some initiates said they could hear echoes of their lost fragments calling from the mirror at night. The blood mirror occult traditions explain this as the ultimate curse. You become your own haunting. Every reflection, whether in glass, water, or digital screens, feels like a reminder of what was taken. This is why mystics feared the blood sacrifice mirror more than any weapon. It didn't just harm the body, it carved into the soul. And no blade, no potion, no prayer could restore what was lost. The symbolism here is powerful. The shattered soul is both a warning and a lesson. It reveals that seeking shortcuts to power through forbidden mirror rituals or reckless curiosity leads only to fragmentation. The astral reflection trap is merciless. It takes what you offer and multiplies the loss. Yet at the same time, the shattered soul speaks to an inner truth. We all carry cracks, illusions, distortions. In that sense, the blood mirror forbidden gnosis reflects not only magical danger, but human nature itself. Every unresolved fear, every denied truth, is another shard waiting to break. Folklore often portrays the shattered soul as wandering endlessly, unable to reincarnate or rest. The blood mirror hidden cults turned this into ritual, teaching that those who failed the confrontation became guardians of the mirror, forced to lure others into the same astral gateway mirror. In this way, the trap feeds itself, turning victims into accomplices. This cycle of blood mirror soul consumption ensures the entity beyond the reflection always grows stronger. It's a chilling thought that the face smiling back at you might not be entirely yours, but a shard of someone who failed before you. And yet, the image of the shattered soul also carries hope. Mystics taught that while the mirror can fragment, it cannot fully destroy. Fragments may be trapped, but the core remains. Some seekers believed that by facing reflections with courage, by refusing to fear the distorted image, they could call back lost pieces over time. The process was slow, painful, and uncertain, but it showed that even in the aftermath of the terrifying mirror ritual, redemption was possible. Like glass reforged through fire, the soul could be remade, stronger, sharper, perhaps even more radiant than before. The metaphor extends to our modern world. Aren't we all fragmented by endless reflections, social roles, digital identities, masks we wear for approval? The blood mirror occult isn't only in rituals of old, it lives in the screens we stare into, the illusions we chase, the parts of ourselves we give away. To recognize the shattered soul is to recognize our own state of fragmentation, and to begin piecing it back together. We must face the same initiatic challenge, to see ourselves clearly without losing ourselves in the reflection. The mirror still waits, even today. So the blood mirror remains, both trap and teacher, curse and catalyst. It reminds us that the abyss is not only outside, but within, that reflections can enslave or initiate, depending on how we meet them. The shattered soul is the final warning and the final invitation. Will you allow the mirror to consume you, or will you master the reflection and walk away whole? For those who choose the second path, the prison becomes a passage. And perhaps, just perhaps, the next reflection will not be a trap at all, but a doorway to freedom. So now that you've walked through the shadows of the blood mirror explained in detail, let me ask you, how many times a day do you hand fragments of yourself to reflections without even noticing? Think of every glance at a screen, every moment lost in mirrors. Are you feeding the astral trap or reclaiming your gaze? The terrifying mirror ritual is more than legend. It's a reminder that what consumes us most often wears the face we already know. The truth is, the shattered soul doesn't come from monsters alone. It comes from ignoring the small choices that weaken us daily. What illusions are you staring into that keep you trapped? What distorted reflections have you accepted as reality? And more importantly, what would happen if you finally decided to break the cycle, to master your reflection instead of being mastered by it? I want you to sit with these questions. Let them disturb you, challenge you, maybe even provoke you. Because awakening begins not with comfort, but with discomfort. The moment you realize the mirror is not just glass, but a test. And the next time you catch your own eyes in a reflection, remember, you're either losing power and/or taking it back. If you're ready to dive deeper into esoteric mirror secrets, hidden cults, and the forbidden gnosis behind the blood mirror occult, then don't walk away now. Subscribe to this channel, activate the notifications, and stay with me on this path. Because the next revelation might not just change the way you see mirrors, it might change the way you see yourself.